Hey guys, welcome to GA Chairing in EYP. Have you ever seen this kind of chair? Perhaps you've been this kind of chair, just sitting in GA with your hands up because you need to hold up the placard, but other than that, you're not really engaged with the rest of the debate. Perhaps you're on your phone, perhaps this was your chairperson during your own nationals. This is something that you see very often in EYP. I remember once when I was an organizer at a session, this was before I chaired. One of the chairs had to go home because they weren't feeling well, so I suggested that I could substitute for them. They told me that I wouldn't be able to chair the GA because I'd never chaired before, and I replied, "How can it be that difficult? It's literally just holding up a placard." Now that I've chaired a couple of times, I'm really starting to see the different things that a chairperson can do during a session to make the GA for their committee a whole lot more effective and generally more enjoyable for everybody. So, during this module, I'm going to talk about what to do. But first, let's talk about what is a GA exactly. The aim during a successful debate are to have active participation of all the delegates in your committee. You don't want the good delegates to make all the point and the delegates that are more shy, more silent, or perhaps less knowledgeable on the topic to just sit on the side and not say anything for the entire day. Next, you want full cooperation between the entire committee. This ties in with the previous point. You want your delegates to work together instead of against each other. In some countries, such as the UK, this can be very difficult because the system is very competitive over there. However, it's important to emphasize that as a committee you're supposed to work together as a team. This means that the very good delegates can perhaps help the delegates that are lagging behind so that everybody can get an enjoyable experience. Furthermore, it is important to understand that for many delegates the GA is what the session is working towards. Having a high academic standard during the debates can make it very worthwhile and rewarding for the delegate to discuss their topics with the other committees. And finally, obviously, fun. Fun is very important in all aspects of EYP and also during the GA. Now, let's talk about how we can achieve these aims. We will use a method that I call the DATE method, which focuses on distribution, academics, team building, and energy levels. First off, we have distribution. This is about the distribution of points between the different delegates in your committee. Try to split it up as evenly as possible. Obviously, it is important to keep in mind that some delegates will be better prepared and more comfortable speaking up during the debate than others. Therefore, it is important to get silent members to speak up. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. The most easy one being personally addressing the delegate and encouraging them to make a point. Another easy way of getting silent members to make points during the debate is actually also very useful for getting very active members to do something when you don't want to recognize them all the time. By getting very active and knowledgeable members of your committee to help the silent members, you can make sure that everybody can enjoy the GA fully. Next up is a method to prevent something that you've probably seen happen in GA quite a lot. A committee is recognized and two delegates stand up. To prevent this, you must make sure that your delegates know whose turn it is to talk next. I do this as follows. Later on in this video, we will discuss the post-its that delegates will hand you with their points that they want to make during the open debate. When I recognize a point from a delegate, I put it on the back of my placard and write their name on the back of the post-it in large. That way, when I hold up the placard, the entire committee can see whose turn it is to go next. When I have multiple points queued up, I put them in order of who is going to speak when. When you are working with different rounds for different topics during the debate, you can make sure to put the post-its above each other to indicate different rounds. I already mentioned recognizing the points from delegates in my committee. To do this, you have to keep a couple of things in mind. The most obvious one is obviously the academic quality of the point of a delegate. More about that later. But what I find more important is to make sure that every delegate has spoken during the entire debate at least once. To make sure that I don't skip any delegate or actually recognize one delegate way too often, I use the roster as depicted on the video. By having rows of delegates and columns of debate, you can keep track of who has spoken during which debate and how much. I make use of different symbols to distinguish between the different aspects of a GA. A straight line is a point, an X is an attack speech, a D stands for direct response, and whether there's a circle around it or not decides whether that point was actually recognized by the board or not. For example, Delegate 1, during debate 1, had one attack speech and 2 points, but only got to deliver his attack speech. Maybe because I didn't recognize his points after he already made an attack speech, or maybe because the board didn't recognize it enough for him to actually make his points. During debate number 2, Delegate number 2 had an attack speech, but it wasn't recognized by the board. However, they did recognize the point that Delegate 2 had to make. Next up, academics. Make sure that your delegates know what is expected of them. This is very important for the flow of the General Assembly, because very often delegates come into the debate either not knowing at all what a GA is, or having wrong expectations because of previous debating experience. This is mainly done through a thorough GA preparation, during which you cover important things such as what is a parliamentary debate, and making sure that they know that the tone of the debate should be polite and constructive. Repeat this often and clearly so that delegates do not confuse it with other debating competitions, as they often think EYP is. Another way of increasing the academic level of a General Assembly is to check the points of your delegates before they make them. This, however, depends on a session, as sometimes boards decide that they would rather have a delegate make their own point, even if it's stupid, than have the chairperson correct their point for them. Sometimes, because there is a selection present, the jury doesn't want you to help the delegates at all because it would give them a wrong image of that particular delegate's academic capabilities. However, personally, I think that when it is allowed, you should give feedback where applicable, and if you think that the point is really bad, you don't really tell them, but instead you just put the point on such a low priority in the order of points that your committee has, that it is most likely not going to be recognized. Again, keep in mind that sometimes when a shy delegate wants to make a point, even if it's not the best point around, it's probably best to still have them make it. Finally, something that you can do to increase the academic quality of the points of your delegate is setting up a system. For example, the P system, point, example, explain. Tell your delegates that every time that they recognize during the open debate, they have to make their point by pointing out the problem within a particular operative clause, then give an example of where this particular clause could become problematic in a real-life scenario, and then explain what they mean. Within EYP, it is also often advised to tell your delegates that instead of explaining, or in addition to explaining, they have to give constructive feedback or suggestions for improvement, as this is the tone of the parliamentary debate. Next up, we have team building. In this slide, I've attached a quote by the American actor Harvey Fierstein. Voters don't change government in the middle of a war. The idea behind this is that people unite when they have a common enemy. Political differences fade in the light of a larger common enemy shared by different people of the same country. The same concept goes within EYP. Within your committee, you're one team. All the other committees are the other teams, or the enemy. Because your delegates have a common enemy and they share purpose and goal, namely of defending their resolution and attacking the other resolutions, they will cooperate better, bond together, and face the other committees as a team. I once chaired a session where the entire committee was from the very beginning very cheerful and very happy, which was of course very nice, but because of this, they never managed to bond on a deeper level, even when I gave them problem solvers and conflict games to play, since they would all just brush it off and laugh about it. However, during General Assembly, they actually bonded together very nicely because they had to. They had to work together and combine their points to defend their resolution against the points from the other committees, and while doing so, they created a very tight bond. The difference in group dynamics within my committee between before the GA and after GA was immense, and I really enjoyed seeing my committee come together so much, which is why I've included team building in this module. So make sure that when you're applying this principle of a common enemy, to avoid potential pitfalls, such as aggression towards other committees, or an inability to work together with the members from the other committees when making their points, for example, by not making any suggestions for improvements. GA is also an ideal time to showcase yourself. So not only by uniting against the common enemy, but also by showing all the others how great you are as a committee. You can do this by showing off your yell, song, mascot, sigil, flag, placard decoration, or anything that you as a committee can come up with, as long as you make sure that it somehow represents your own committee. When you do this, do make sure that it doesn't disturb the GA too much. Of course, it is important to have fun, and it is important for your delegates to show the others who they are. But it's also important that the GA can be held at a high academic level without too many interruptions. So make sure that your yell isn't in the middle of GA, and make sure that your placard is still legible despite all the decorations that you've put on it. Within your committee, there's also a couple of things that you can do to make people work together better. I already mentioned that a well-prepared delegate can help out those that are silent or less well-prepared to have them make points during the open debate as well, which is beneficial for the silent delegate, as they will manage to speak up during debate, but also for the delegate who's helping out, as they feel like they're making an active change within their committee for the better. A coaching or goal-setting chairing style works like a gem when you're trying to achieve team building within General Assembly, especially if you as a chair manage to take a step back and let the committee run themselves, as it gives them a feeling of ownership. And finally, energy. Keep your delegates energized. It is really important if you want to ensure a nice debate from beginning to the very end. You can keep your delegates energized by playing a game with them during General Assembly. You can think of how chairs like to play bingo, for example, except make sure that it's more appropriate and less disturbing. It is also very important to give them tasks to do. When you see a delegate is slouching and not paying attention at all, give them the placards and tell them that they have to hold it up when appropriate. Finally, it's very important that you always lead by example in this regard. If delegates see that you're not paying attention, constantly on your phone, slouching, falling asleep, then why should they pay attention? On top of keeping your delegates energized, it's also important to keep them motivated. Addressing them personally is an important way of giving them the feeling that they as an individual are important for the team and, by association, for the debate. Encouraging them to take up their part as a member of the committee and to contribute to the GA. Setting certain challenges for your committee is also a very good way of keeping them motivated, because they will try to work towards getting those. Certain challenges can be having them make at least one direct response for every debate, having them make at least 2 points during every open debate. It can be having every delegate speak at least one over the course of the entire GA day, and so on and so forth. And also, pay extra attention to your committee during your own motion for a resolution, as it gives delegates the feeling that you are as invested in your own work as they are. And of course, fun, because everybody knows that EYP and therefore also GA is about fun. So make sure that you and your delegates have fun. Try to motivate shy delegates to make a point during GA, but if you can clearly see that they are not up to it and they really don't want to do it, then it will only make them feel worse if you keep pushing them. Brief and debrief your own debate. Make sure that they're pumped to defend their resolution against all the other committees. And afterwards, whether your resolution has passed or not, make sure to talk to your committee about how it went. If your resolution hasn't passed, make sure that they're not taking it too harshly, and if it has, congratulate them on their good work. And of course, as always, joke around a little bit during GA. Make sure that they know that even if they are supposed to be serious when they're making their points, it's okay to not be serious the entire day through. So, this was my module on GA sharing. If you have any questions, please let me know and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. Thank you.